Joe Stroop here, Bikeman Performance. Today we're going to do a install on the Boost Reed manifold from Bikeman. Now, one of the main differences you're going to see with Bikeman compared to everybody else is this actually swept radius right here. And the swept radius is mega important because as the airflow blows through, if you don't have a swept radius there, it's just going to blow straight through. It's going to hit the middle reed, and it's just going to flex and open at an angle and be really hard on the reed life. Where if you have a swept angle on this, it acts like the upper edge of a wing that actually pulls the air around and engages the reeds more evenly. When you do that, it's going to make your reed cage act larger. So when it acts larger, it's not working as hard. The reeds aren't opening as far to move the same amount of air, and they can close quicker. So you end up getting better power, better response, and better reed life. It's a ultimate combination. Now on the bottom of the reed block, you're going to see different ports. It comes with a nipple on there that you can run for boost or vacuum. This can be used for a boost gauge, or you can use it to control a blow-off valve. Now, if you want to put a second port in, this is just a standard pipe thread fitting. You can get a barb fitting at any hardware store and screw into there. But it comes with the one, and we're going to have Farmer show you the install of the Boost manifold and the new reeds. If you have a 22 or a 23 Boost, they have a white colored reed that are prone to chipping and flaking. Since 23, we've been installing these updated V-Force ones that Polaris is now using on the 24 models. So I'm going to hand this off to Farmer, and he's going to show you how to install all this stuff.
All right, hey, Farmer with Bikeman here. We're going to be installing the billet kit. So we've got the instructions here, and we're going to get right into it. What you're going to need for this job: screwdriver, nut driver, 8 mil, 10 mil, long and short, in both 3/8 and quarter drive, T40, 4 mil ball end, 10 mil wrench, 13 mil wrench, 17 mil wrench. Extension, I also have a swivel extension, or a kind of a ball end extension, and another long quarter drive ratchet, 3/8 ratchet, side cutters, and you'll probably also need a needle nose. Step 1, they recommend lifting up the sled. I've already got it raised. Step 2, we're going to tear off the seat. Let's get to her. All right, step 1 being this one has a toolbox or auxiliary box. We need to lift these two clips and slide this out of the way. Here's the clip that fastens down the seat. Turn this, lift your seat away. Next step, after you get the battery exposed, remove your negative and positive cables. This takes a 10 mil socket. Be sure to get that all the way off the battery so you don't arc. It's always good to put the bolt back in so you don't lose the little square puck in there. Everybody knows how fun it is to find them after they fall out. All right, next step. Take out the battery hold down. Also a 10 mil. Lift, and then they flip up and set them aside. Then I'm going to go ahead and pull the battery. We'll go set this aside. All right, next we're going to be removing the side panels. Undo your clips. These ones are already undone. Find a safe spot for these. Same process on the other side. Next, we're going to remove the hood. There are plug-ins under here you need to remove for the main harness. Unpop that and turn these two clips, and then lift your hood away. All right, now we're going to remove the key plate here. You take out these two push pins right on the top. Oh, that one come apart. Lift it and then slide it forward, and then it will come back. It's always a good idea to bag your items as you're taking them off. It makes it so much easier during your reassembly. You need to unplug the key switch, the cigarette lighter or the auxiliary lighter, and then this one's equipped with a helmet thing. It just pushes out through the bottom. Set this to the side. Next, we're going to be removing the 4 Torx. These are a T40, 2 located up here, and then 2 kind of down in your shin areas on the snowmobile. Bag these up. You need to remove the push pins. There's 3 of them here, here, and then the one down on the side. We'll start with this one. I like to take them all the way out so you don't lose them. Sometimes they come apart like that, not a big deal. We'll bag these up. Next, we're going to remove the upper air box. 2 push pins, 1 on each side. And unclip the sensor. Unclip the sensor. You might have to cut the zip tie. And then unclip the ECU plug-in. Next, remove or loosen this clamp and set this aside. All right, in order to get the cowling off, unplug your 2 ECU plugs. There's a clip here. You're going to want to have to work off the plastic or cut the zip tie. I try to just work them off the plastic. Use the pick, get it in there. There's little metal fingers that grab. There, get that down out of the way. Next, we'll be removing the gas cap and the filler neck. Sometimes you got to grab these with a channel locks, anything like that. Set these aside. Remove your clutch spreading tool. Pop this off. All right, gently pull the shielding out, or not the shielding, the fairing off here basically, and wiggle the upper air box out. Now we'll set this aside. All right, next this will lift off. Recoil will be attached. Give it a little pull and let it hang down out of your way. All right, next we're going to remove the rear part of the battery box off here. 2 10mm bolts on top. And for the 2 down in the bottom, you're going to want a long extension with some sort of a swivel or a wobble. All right, lift this off. The plug-in right here. Snip the zip tie. unplug it and set her aside. All right, next we'll be removing the two 10 mil nuts that hold the tank down. Little washers on here as well. All right, we'll bag all these up. All right, next we're going to be popping these clips for the fuel lines. I like to take a pick, you just work them up. They pop up about 1/4 inch or so. You don't have to take them all the way off. Just do it carefully, they are fragile. Oh, come on. There. And pop those off. Sometimes you might get a little bit of fuel to spray out of these if you've had this sled powered up at all. Lines off. There's a connector for the fuel pump on the opposite side. You need to disconnect that. And then next we will remove the fuel tank. You have to take care not to damage these two nipples on top of the fuel pump assembly. They're very easily broken on here, so be very careful when you're lifting the tank up. All right, after you get your fuel lines off, the fuel pump unplugged, make sure your gas cap is back on so you don't slosh fuel out everywhere. And we will be lifting the back of the tank up. Push this down so it don't catch. Again, make sure you watch your tabs up here so you do not break them off on the frame. Get that back. Then lift the tank out. This one's got quite a bit of gas in it. Next up, we're going to be removing the clutches. Primary clutch, I believe, is a T60. And the secondary is a 15 mil. Take note of your stack of washers and spacer. You know, try not to lose any of them little guys. Set that aside. All right, on the Polarises, these have a 2-piece clutch. Work this back and forth and pull it right off. Some might be harder than others. Set that aside. All right, at this time, take your clutch spreader, spin it into the secondary. You don't have to go too far. Just get a little bit of the load off this bearing here and then slide your belt and secondary off. Same thing on here. There are washers. Sometimes they like to stick to the back of the clutch. Make sure they all stay on the shaft. Good. All right, take your BMP clutch puller. If you don't already have one, you can buy one online. Thread it in and pop your primary off. I already popped this one. Make the video go a little quicker. Set these aside. Make sure you do not lose your bearing on here. Set that with the rest of your stuff. All right, now we're going to get the oil tank out of the way. Two 10 mil bolts back here, and the low oil sensor right here. Unplug this. And we'll pop these two. All right, these two nuts I just throw back on here. Don't have to bag these. If you got a stud, you can put them back on. Pull the tank back. And we'll slide out of the plastic and just kind of lay this down here. All right, next we're going to be taking the side brace off here. T40 back here, take the dart out, and there's just enough flex in this plastic that'll work at it a little bit. Take out the front one. And then the back one. And this one also has a 13 mil nut on it. There you go, and pull that bar out of the way. All right, we recommend that you take a photo of this to make sure you get the lines in the correct spots on here when you're doing your reassembly. So at this point, go ahead and cut your zip ties in here. This is gonna all have to be removed. And that basically keeps the hoses in place so they don't rub on the backside of the clutches. We'll set this aside. All right, if you don't have one, get yourself a Bikeman spring puller. These things are handy. This is nice little bend, works awesome. Next, we're going to take off the wastegate mid pipe here. Loosen up the V-band clamp. Just twist it right off. Set this aside. V-band can just kind of hang out on there. This one already has a can on it. We're going to do another video showing an install of the can too. All right, next we're going to get the can out of the way. You need a 17 millimeter to take out the sensor, the probe. Undo the V-band clamp. Make sure you have your spring that goes from the chassis to the muffler body undone. And we're going to lift the turbo up out of the way a little bit. And then work this can up. All right. We'll just let this kind of hang here. I already took and loosened up the intake tube. We're going to want to take this off. Sorry, not the intake, this is the charge tube. We'll set this aside and this. Right, next you need to undo the handlebar harnesses. There's a upper, it says top and bottom on these, can't really mix them up. Pop them off. Now you're going to want to take and pop the little clip on the back of here and pull them off the actual air box. The air box will be coming out, obviously. Always a stubborn one. This one's being real stubborn. Alright, that one I just unplugged. There's another clip in here you're going to want to pull the harness out of. Once you get that clip loose, pull the harness up out of the way. All right, next up, to make a little more room, we're going to get the voltage regulator out of the way. There's 3 plugs with clips and 2 bolts, one located on either side going into the golden bracket here. Slide this out of the way, set it aside. Next, you'll also be removing the plug-ins for both coils. It's a blue plug-in and a white plug-in. Sometimes it makes it easier to use a pick on these tiny little freaking plugs. These are color coded so you don't have to worry about mixing them up. Get those unplugged. There's a bunch of zip ties you'll see you need to cut. They're kind of just all around on here. Just you got to get all these wires off of this air box before you remove it. And we are almost there. Like I said, just take your time when you're doing this. Make sure you want to take pictures as you're doing it so you don't lose your placement of things. You know, go ahead and feel free to do so. All right, after you get all your connectors undone off the coil pack here, pop your fuel line loose. You will have fuel that will come out of here. Catch it with a rag. And next, the fun part. Takes a little finessing and a little wiggling things around. I pull all these wires over to the side, kind of get them up, and start rolling the air box. You just have to watch where you're going to catch on the fuel rail a little bit there. Keep wiggling and wiggling. And you'll get it up high enough, and just take care not to break that plastic line. And out comes the air box. All right, part we've been waiting for, getting these throttle bodies out of the way. Going to take and pop off the fuel line on the other side. Again, take care to put a rag under there. You will have a little bit of fuel. Got him off. And now we're going to take a 4mm ball end Allen and loosen up your V-band clamps. You can kind of rotate it after you get a little bit loose. And you can feel for the end of the stud or the end of the Allen bolt. You want to back it out pretty much as far as it goes. Just don't let it come all the way out. And after you can tell it's loose enough for the bodies to be slid out of, you should be good. Alright, this one was clocked in a terrible spot. Not gonna lie, it was a little bit of a challenge to get to. After we got it loose, I can spin it a little bit, make it a little easier to get to. But we're good. These are loose. And I got to cut a few more zip ties here to make it a little more easily to prop this up. What are we attached on? All right, I cut a couple more zip ties. Got the throttle body to flex a little bit more. Now I'm going to put a large zip tie. I didn't have a good bungee to get this held up out of my way. Just make sure you can access, and you can kind of get a view in here now. You can access all the bolts. Yep, you're going to need an 8mm. I'm going to go ahead and pull these V-band clamps out of here quick. You take it, there's 12 bolts here. And if you do have gas fumes in here and you're using battery powered tools, you know, let it air out a little bit, make sure it doesn't start on fire on you. Now we're going to have to get a short. And go ahead and remove the stock reed cage. There it is. Alright, since we're so deep into this sled, we figured it's a good time to do the reeds. Now these reeds still actually look fine. There's no tearing or cutting on them. But being it's such a project to get to these reeds, we are going to just go ahead and do them. We also sell the V-Force upgraded reeds. They're a little better than the stock ones and less likely for tearing. I mean, every reed still wears, but these outperform the stock reeds. So since you're in this deep, might as well go ahead and get them right here at Bikeman Performance. Now, this tool is a definite must for doing these reeds. You're going to see these little clips right here. Now they tell you in the instructions to push this in squarely. It's a pain in the butt. What I have found, if you take the tip of it, line it up with the center, just wiggle it back and forth a little bit, you'll feel it pop. Go over to the next one. Well, I go to end to end, sorry. Same thing on this end one. Wiggle it back and forth. Try the other corner. And it pops out. Same thing, flip it, go to the other side, pop it, then to the last corner. Alright, that's how you get your reeds out. Drop the old ones off. Now for the center part, I like to take a little screwdriver, hard to see down in here, but there's a center part, and you just pry this little guy out, get it started. Then I take a pick and I go ahead and push that out. It's a little, they're in there snug, so it takes a little bit to get them out. Set that aside, set your old reeds aside, flip it. Again, start with prying the center out a little bit. Then go ahead and force it out with whatever you got that'll reach in there. And then you can remove your inner pedals. Set them aside. Now your inner ones are going to have a little cross in the center. The outers do not. We'll take the inner reed, new one, set it in here. I like to put all the little white corners on the same side. And your new reeds are going to come with new wedges. On these wedges, they'll only go in one direction. This side is open to grooves, this side is not. So you want to start the grooved side into the reed cage. Make sure it lines up. Then you just want to push this in flush. Take the tool they gave you, and that's it. Push it in flush. You don't want to countersink it. Take the other new one, verify your side. Start the edge, again, push it in flush. It can be a little difficult to do, but they'll go. Alright, now you set your outer pedals on. Kind of push them over the tab on here. They'll kind of snap on a little bit. And just make sure they stay in position as you put it back into the cage itself. And same thing with these, work them around. You hear it lock into position. Verify your reed pedals are laying down. If they're not, kind of shake them around a little bit. Gets them to resettle, kind of true themselves up in there. And there's your reeds. Your new billet intake is going to come with O-rings that the throttle body is going to seal onto. Put your O-rings in. I put a little Vaseline in here to kind of keep them in place. So we already went ahead and did that. Now we're going to take it over to the machine and install it. Now when putting these in, you want the blue side to the BMP cage, white side towards the motor. We'll take it over and we will install it and get going on that. Drop these in quick. Press them down snugly. Set your gaskets on. And we're off to the machine. Alright, I got a couple rags stuffed in here. Now I'm just going to scrape a little bit of residue that's on here. There's usually not too much to clean off, but the rag will keep the stuff from falling into the engine. And I just drag a razor blade across them. Make sure there's nothing sticking out on here, or no gasket material. And when you take your rag out, just kind of drag it across the bottom and wipe out anything if it's falling in there. All right, down in this corner, there's a little bracket. It holds the part of the harness. Just gonna want to push that over with your finger just to make sure it's out of the way. This tab is put in here for that to come up and rest against. So just give it a little shove with your finger, and then put these buggers in here. And make sure they're sitting flush. They are now. And now we'll go ahead and start all the bolts again.
You shouldn't have said again. We could have cut it out to where you didn't fuck up.
Okay, well let's recut it out then. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and restart the bolts. You edit half the stuff out anyway, don't you?
Yeah, I can take a lot out.
Alright, now these get torqued in a two-step process. So the first one is 50 inch-pounds, which is roughly about 4.5 foot-pounds, maybe a little bit less. My torque wrench don't go down that low, so I'm going to ballpark it. We'll go around all these starting on the center two, and then you crisscross on the way to the outside. And again, this is just snug. All you're doing is snugging this up. You can kind of verify by looking in between down here and see that it's just pulling it in tight to the block. You want to take your time with this. You don't want to rush it. You screw something up at this point, you'll be mad at yourself. So just take your time and be patient. Not a lot of room in here. Second step is 100 inch-pounds. And that's roughly, I believe, 8.3 foot-pounds. So if you get a torque wrench, go ahead and set that. And again, start in your center. You should have a finer tooth torque wrench.
It won't look like shit for the video. You can put a couple extensions on it and come farther out if you want.
Trouble is getting here.
I guess, yeah.
And this torque wrench is so stiff, it just loosened them up.
Yeah.
That's the bad thing about such low torque. For that one I am going to actually need an extension.
Yeah, one here.
Put wobbler on. He's too big. All right, last one. And I like to go over them one more time. Gasket will kind of squish in a little bit, and never hurts to double check your work. The billet intake is installed. Next, we're going to pop our zip tie loose and get our throttle body back down there. But first, I'm going to hang these clamps back on. You want both these facing the clutch side, obviously, otherwise you're not going to be able to get to that one. Just hang them on there, and then we'll get this loosened up and brought down. All right, just to be sure, you got a clean surface. Again, take your razor blade. You're going to get oxidation on the back of these, or on the face of the throttle body. It happens from contact with the rubber. So just go ahead and scrape that clean. I could have did that in the last step, but we'll do it now. And just keep it held over and away from your opening on your motor. This stuff will just fall straight down. All right, with them scraped, I'm going to go ahead and wipe them, make sure there's no other residue on them. And we're going to go ahead and swing this down into place. Now the fun part is spreading these. Sometimes if we just wiggle from the top in, you can get them to walk right on to the throttle body. Otherwise you're going to have to get your fingers in there. It's a little tight, but you can get them in there. And work them clamps up over the edge. Take your 4mm ball end, put a little forward pressure on these to keep them in, and then kind of hold it from rotating, and then slowly bring this in. Just make sure it stays seated. And I like to stop as soon as you feel like it don't want to turn anymore. Stop there, and then we will hand tighten for the rest of the way. Move over to your inner one. I got to get an extension for this. All right. Try to get her lined up here. Come on. So close. Just keep flopping back and forth. All right, there we go. Like I say, take it nice and slow. You can kind of feel the clamp start to get tight. They're starting to snug. All right, now I'm going to grab a manual ratchet. Lost my light now. All right, like I say, these are just being tightened up against the O-ring, you really don't need to crush these. So take them nice and just make them snug. You kind of tell it's just aluminum, so you do not want to go crazy on them. And again, do your outer one. And again, just go snug. It don't have to be killed. Feels pretty good right there. All right, next up, shoving your airbox back in. Kind of put your wires in through first, kind of get them pulled over as far as you can. A little bit of wiggling. Get it up over that fuel tube. You have to wrestle the harness a little bit here and there. And again, just take your time. Don't force nothing. That's when you break stuff. What else I'm catching on? Harness. More harness. Kind of keep spinning it and pushing it in. All right, before you go ahead and seat it back into the boots, just kind of rearrange all your wires. All right, so after you get your airbox in place, your wires kind of sort of where they were, go ahead and start clipping them together and putting them back on the clips here. And then I go ahead and push the box on all the way, and I will tighten up the clamps. And again, too tight is too much, you know, so it's just a clamp. Just make sure it's centered, make sure you're pushed all the way on, and snug it up. At this point, you can go ahead and put your fuel line on. Make sure it seats all the way. Push the clip. Now we're going to go ahead and start buttoning up the rest of this wire harness over here. Got one plug in on this side I popped off, and we got a bunch on the other side. All right, we're going to get the voltage regulator back up here. And kind of hang it up in place here, about where it goes, and then plug it in. Then I'll grab the screws to secure it. So again, there's 3 of these. And they only go in their corresponding plugs, so you can't mess them up. You also have the coil wires here. Sure to get those back in. And as you're doing this, you're going to want to put all the zip ties back on. Now you can see every spot where there's a white mark on the harness generally corresponds with a spot for a zip tie to go. That's like the anti-chafing, and it kind of also just tells you where to put all the zip ties. So we're going to start going through and buttoning them up, putting zip ties on, and get everything into place as far as that goes. All right, after you get everything in place, make sure you get all your sensors plugged in, all your connectors in. Be sure to put this fuel line back on. Shove your 2 wires up here for your accessories, your helmet or auxiliary plug, and then the key switch. And then we are going to go ahead, this actually goes around the other way. This comes from the front. Up the middle. All right, then we're going to go ahead and get the tank back on here. All right, be careful doing this again. You got to watch the tabs up front here. Get your tank underneath the front part. Come down on the saddles and then just bop it forward. She'll go into place. Same thing with the inner battery box. Get that in place. All right, we'll get the bolts for this and tighten her down. All right, washers on the plastic. Get everything finger started. Actually, these two. Yes. Don't forget this part. All right, after you get your fuel tank on, grab your trim piece, install this at the same time. There's one zip tie that goes here, so I'm going to grab that before we get it all bolted into place. Make it a little bit easier. Let's get it started loosely, and then go ahead and put this in place. A little bit of a pain to reach down and get these ones, but it's doable. Take your time. And again, those are tightened with a 10 mil. I'll grab that. Should have tightened the tank ones first. All right, before you pop this on, tighten your corner tank ones. Again, snug, you don't have to kill them. Then we'll put the front ones on. Go ahead and tighten the back one. And last, the front. These are just in plastic, so Don't go crazy on them. Go ahead and tighten down the zip tie. Cut your tail. On to the next step. All right, after you get the tank in and secured, go ahead and line up your fuel lines and push them on and snap your clips. Make sure your wires are up here high enough to get to your keypad, and if you got to reroute a few things, there we go. Now we got a little extra slack. Again, those three will be going through the console. Those are good there. All right, now we're going to install the upper air cover, the shrouding, and all that stuff back on. Remember, this is the part we popped off in this corner, so we're going to just kind of keep this up here. Be mindful of that. Slide this back into place, and it's just going to kind of rest here. Make sure, again, you got your 3 wires up here you're going to need. And I'm going to clip this back onto the plastic. And that roughly went right here. And that's that. Now we'll grab the next set. All right, so now we're going to take the shroud, bring him back up here. Okay, if you need to pull the rope a little bit, make a little slack in it, do so.
Yes,
Yep. Get this stuff out of the way. Get the gas cap off.
Your little ring is on the other, or like I think right by your knee.
Yeah. Get your wires up and then spread this right around. Kind of wiggle it into place. Just verifying all my hoses and wires are in the right spot. Want to get my sensor up over here. Now we're going to leave this hang again. All right, you got the lock ring. Just kind of get that on by hand. You don't snug it down yet until you get all the bolts started. Throw that on to keep the fumes in. And now we'll go get all our T40s and our push darts. All right, before we get too far, put your brace in. Getting a little ahead of myself today. Get your T40 in the back here, started with your nylock nut. Get the front one started. Again, start everything by hand. You don't want to cross thread any of this stuff. It's going into aluminum. We'll grab the impact and buzz them in. T40. All right, pull your poly ahead or your belly pan ahead. You ain't gonna hurt it. Get her tight. And same thing on the back one. All right, now we're ready for the oil tank. You can get it started down in the slot in the front down here. Pretty self-explanatory. Get it onto the 2 studs in the back. Get the 2 10mm nylock nuts started. grab the ratchet and tighten them, and in the meantime, do not forget to plug in your low oil sensor to up with the 10 mil. And there's the oil tank. All right, next up we're going to put the keypad console assembly back in. I'm just going to kind of get it started up in here. Go the other way. Got that. Push the little auxiliary plug back through. Give it a little wiggle, it should pop right through. Then your accessory power is polarized, so brown one goes on the outer peg and the hot goes on the inner. You tuck the back of it and push that down. Then we'll get the darts to hold that in place. Put the two darts in the front of the keypad. We're going to get all the torque screws started. Again, start them all by hand. There we go. ECU plug-ins. Pop these in quick. So again, we had the 4 Torx holding this in place, 2 on the top by the steering post, and 2 each down by where your shins would ride. And then the one last dart goes on the side of the belly pan over here. We'll take the T40 and go ahead and tighten them up. Oh, battery issues. Then we'll take the T40 and go ahead and tighten them up. So we removed the secondary to make it easier to get to this. And then I also removed this hose routing piece in here. It's a good idea to take a picture of this so you get these back in the same position when you're done. I got this set up so we can put it back on. Now on the billet intake, I know we don't have good lighting down here, there's a little rubber nipple you need to remove. And I got part of it. Getting a piece at a time. All right, it is off. Maybe we should just leave it installed.
Oh yeah, because you gotta get the thing back on.
Yeah, and I wrecked it. All right, now that we got the hose plumbed down through, you want to make sure it's not going to interfere with the throttle linkage. So make sure you go around that. You know, don't get into a pinch area. Grab yourself a big long pliers like this. You need some good lighting. You gotta grab it a little shorter. Need 5 more hands. Yeah. We're just gonna lean this up against here. Hold it with my feet. I'm part monkey. All right. Get that pushed up on.
Did you put a zip tie on that?
Yeah, we're gonna get a zip tie on there. I would never have got it pulled over. All right, now that you got that on, go ahead and put a zip tie on that. And that's how you install the relief valve or the relief hose for the blow-off valve. And of course, we've got that little hose hooked up. We're going to come over here and tighten up the clamps. You'll get your clamp seated properly. Make sure this thing's pushed down. You can feel that it's seated nice, and go ahead and just snug it up. You don't have to kill it right now. All right, we got that snug. And next we're going to get the muffler up here, get that in place, and then we'll force this all together as a unit. Where's that shiny muffler? Make the job a little easier, we're going to go ahead and pull these darts out. All right, being we're also going to be doing the intake hose, we're going to go ahead and remove this and bring it over to the bench. Get the clip undone. Undo your data plug. We're going to be removing this. We'll be removing this clamp. All right, you catch a screwdriver under there and it'll pop off. Go ahead and spread it. Take off that one. All right, after you get your clamp loose, there's a stuffer you need to take out of here. That's going to go back in here to keep this from collapsing. So we'll go ahead, get this started. It's a snug fit. Come on, work with me. All right, now we'll go to the machine and check it for fitment. So now we'll go ahead and put the clutches back on, get these into place. That on. Belts are directional, so I always try to keep running them the same direction. Get that loosely in there. Sneak the primary in here, inner half of it anyway. And get the belt down in there. Oh, go back in there, you little bugger. All right. All right, we're going to run this in with a little impact. Not too tight. Then we're going to go ahead and torque it to manufacturer's specifications. And if you need to, you can hold the brake. There we go. Now we'll install the primary. I'm being a bugger. There we go. I'm going to cheat. I put a little hammer action on that. All right, install your primary clutch bolt. Again, hand tighten everything first, just to be safe. All right, after you get your bolt rattled on a little bit with an impact, not a lot, go ahead and torque it. And these are torqued to 110. Put a pry bar in there. And there you go, there's your torque on your primary clutch. Now we can go ahead and remove the clutch spreader. We'll go ahead and lay these back where they go. And put your clutch tool back into its little holding spot. And then pop the belt up out of the secondary. All right, and there's your clutch side. And we're going to go ahead and put the darts in to make sure it stays in place. Try to hold this still. We'll rotate this back around. Drop it on your turbo. Go ahead and then tighten up the clamps. Get them both a little bit snug. Check your clearances on everything. Wiggle it around a little bit and go ahead and tighten it down. All right, next we'll be installing, make sure this is on the right way, yep, it is. Slide that over the muffler end, work it down into place. You're gonna bring your clamp loose enough so you can slide it up over the flange on the wastegate tube. Go a little looser. Well, we're gonna have to go even looser. Nut driver. I'll go the other way. Ow. Oh, these things suck. Problem we're having right now is none of this other stuff is tight, but they don't know that in the video. and I don't have that frickin' rubber pad under the muffler, so it's wanting to drop too low. Oh, come on. Who's that funny carnival music they play in Benny Hill? All right, after you get your V-band lined up, snug it up. Go ahead and snug up this one. Make sure you're all the way on your donut up there. Then go ahead and reinstall your spring clamps. Then go ahead and reinstall your exhaust springs. All right.
That's it. All right, so say that again, and then I'll go to you, and then just do a wrap up, and that's the.
And this. And also, after you get everything lined up, get your exhaust sensor back into position, and go ahead and tighten that up. Again, just get her snug. You don't have to kill it. Again, that's a 17 millimeter. Then be sure to keep the center lead away from the recoil rope here. So you want to zip tie that off just so it doesn't get rubbed through by the rope. And go ahead and also put on the muffler spring. Goes from the frame up to the muffler body here. All right, and that's how you install billet kit, charge tube, blow off valve, and intake tube on the Patriot Boost.